Hey guys, well today what I want to do is kind of maybe a little refresher on some of the basics. This one's going to be on fire and more specifically the proper tinder bundle, and I'm actually going to make two different types of tinder bundles. I just hosted an event, a Facebook event that I created over the weekend, last Saturday, and some great guys attended, and I really appreciate them showing up and everything, and we had a really good time and just shared some knowledge and stuff like that. And they ranged in different skill levels from having attended some Pathfinder classes all the way to maybe never have used a ferro rod before. So what I want to do, and we concentrated super heavy on fire in this event. There were some other things shared too, but mostly fire. And in particular, fire with natural materials. Should always carry a Surefire on you, some sort of man-made material that will give you instant, or give you flame right away, you know, instant flame if you hit it with a ferro rod or a lighter or something like that, or a lighter of course. But if you're going to try and create a fire out of natural materials, natural tinders, it's going to take you a little bit to find the material, and also you need to find the proper material. As you can see, I've got a lot of grass around me. That's primarily because I'm in my pasture. If you go into the deep woods, mostly, depending on where you're at, in my area, you're not going to find a lot of grass. If you will stumble across some swamps. We're a very swampy state, and there you'll find some swamp grass. But primarily, the best tinder to use is an inner bark, an inner fiber bark, inner bark fiber that is going to hold, it's going to burn longer than grass. Grass will catch fire very easily and give you flame sometimes very easily, but the bark, in my opinion, is going to be your best. And specifically in my area, it's going to be the popple tree, the aspen. It's the same thing. The inner bark of the aspen tree is my go-to tinder. Obviously birch bark and stuff like that, but if you don't have birch, there are some areas in our state that they're kind of few and far between. And also, we're going to talk about this too, but for me, there's basically two types of tinder bundles. Sometimes you can kind of cross them and stuff, and one will work for the other. But you're going to have a ferro rod tinder bundle, and you're going to have an ember tinder bundle. The ember would be for flint and steel, or for a bow drill, something along those lines, where the ferro rod is different. It's going to be easier to catch using different materials. So anyway, let me reset up the camera and I'll show you the inner bark of the aspen tree, which I know you've probably seen before, but I want to rehash some of the basics. Mostly when I stumble across grass, when I'm out trekking through the woods, it's going to be grass, real tall grass like this, swamp grass. This is what I call swamp grass. And the way I harvest it for a tinder bundle, to make sure that it's absolutely 100% dry, I'll run my hands up the stalk. Now you're going to either want to wear gloves for this or be extremely careful, because this grass will cut you. And actually, right now is not my favorite time to harvest it. My favorite time to harvest it is the dead of winter, because then it's all, or a lot more of it's dead and a lot of the moisture's gone out of it. You can see a lot of this stuff is still pretty, you know, I mean, it's on its dying days, but it's still got a lot of green left in it. This piece here looks a little dry. I'm just going to kind of very gently, okay, out of that I got one leaf. So that's how I do it if I want grass for my tinder bundle. Now, will this other dried stuff that doesn't come off very gently like this, will that burn? Sure, absolutely it'll burn. For me though, it's not part of my tinder bundle. It's part of my next step. It's part of my, you know, right before I would put my pencil lead size sticks on. It's not the, and I'm throwing around these terms, this bird nest deal. For me, or tinder bundle, for me there's a bird's nest inside of a tinder bundle. Outside of that, maybe weed tops, maybe some of this grass that's not 100%, you know, it's definitely dry and all brown and everything, but it's not 100% without moisture. Bird's nest, super finely processed materials. Tinder bundle, less processed, more, you can get away with a little bit more moisture in it. And then on top of that, then you've got your materials, your kindling, your weed top, stuff like that to build you up to your sustainable fire. Okay, so we got some of that. We got one more thing to gather. Okay, the next thing is my flash tinder. I'm going to use some of these milkweed seed pods as my flash tinder. Like I said earlier, I'm going to make two different types of tinder bundles. One for a ferro rod fire and one for an ember fire. For an ember fire, for me, flash tinder doesn't work that good. It doesn't hold my ember and then spread it and create flame as good as some other materials. It's okay if there's some in there, but that's not what I want tucked around my ember. This flash tinder, if I manipulate that into my bird's nest properly, a lot of times I can get a one-strike ferro rod fire. Alright, I'm going to collect some of these and then we'll process and separate our tinder bundles into two different ones for the two different methods of fire. More flash tinder. Okay, as you can see, I've kind of woven my flash tinder in throughout my tinder bundle. I've still processed it down. Some of these chunks wouldn't hurt for some of these to get out of here, but they will burn. I've got it up off the damp ground, although I am going to have to, you know, the best thing to do would be to find a piece of bark or something like that to lay down, but I'm not going to light it on top of my bag. I've, like I said, I've kind of woven the flash tinder in through there, through my tinder bundle. I'm going to make it kind of like a shelter, where this is the base. That's kind of where I want some of my flash tinder. It's down in there. And I want it to kind of, let's get some of this good stuff down in there. I want it to kind of fold over like that. Now, what's the best ferro rod to get? Obviously the biggest one you can. But if you're going to, when you practice, if you can test yourself, you know, I find that to be pretty rewarding and kind of a neat experience. So instead of using this half-inch ferro rod, I'm going to try and use this one. This is a 1/8 by about 1.5 inches. Starting to rain too, I don't know if you can hear that. Not a one-strike fire. I would have liked it to have been a one-strike fire, but either way, it worked. Now with all that bark, flash tinder, everything in there, it's going to allow this fire, this tinder bundle, to burn for a long time. I'm actually going to put it out right now, but a lot of material there still left to burn. A lot of material. Okay, my next fire is going to be an ember fire. I'm going to do flint and steel, and as you can see here, it's all the same bark. And if you see a random piece of birch bark, it's just because it was in my tinder bundle and I carry birch bark with me. I tried to pick it all out, but it's all the same material. This is all the inner bark of the aspen tree. It's just in different stages of decay or decomposing. This stuff is older, this stuff's a little newer. The newer stuff gives me more of those nice hairy fibers that I want. Super hairy, and I'm able to process them down. They don't turn to dust, but they're still real, you know, nice and stringy. Wouldn't hurt for this little section to be processed down a little bit more. But this is as good as it gets in my area, pretty much. Sometimes people want to use birch bark, and that's fine. Birch bark is a great substance for a ferro rod fire, and a flint and steel fire or a bow drill fire, in my opinion, birch bark is not my #1 choice, and that's because of all the oils or resins in the wood. If you ever hear anybody do a birch bark tinder bundle, you'll hear it pop and snap as they're trying to get the ember to go. In my opinion, that's not the 100% best tinder bundle. Will it work? Sure. It'll work really good for a lot of people. This will work better for me. Alright, let me, sorry. This is what I would consider my bird's nest. This is what I would consider, this outer ring, my tinder bundle. And of course I would have a lot more material, you know, weed top, stuff like that to catch on. But this is just the main, what people like to call a tinder bundle. But I consider this my bird's nest and that my tinder bundle. Alright, let's see if we can do this. Okay, and in going along with the spirit of testing myself, I'm going to use this piece of char cloth right there, which, I don't know, it's bigger than maybe about the same size as my index finger nail. And no, the tinder bundle doesn't have any hidden char cloth. Alright. Sorry for the wind, guys. There we go. And there we go. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's going to be basic for some of you folks, but for me it's kind of fun to go back to the basics. And when you're training and you're training yourself, you will perform how you train. So if you train half-assed, you're going to perform half-assed. Once in a great while, I get into the habit of trying to push myself a little too far, like push my materials a little too far, which isn't a bad thing. It's just sometimes you can get into a rut. Trying to make the crappiest tinder bundle work with the crappiest fire starting materials, you know, like little tiny ferro rod, and how much can I get away with? It's always good to go back to, this is best case scenario. This is the way that, I mean, if I really wanted a fire, this is how I would do it. And obviously I would have, you know, instead of using a little tiny ferro rod or a little tiny piece of char cloth, I would have increased that a lot if I really truly wanted to do that. But it's good to go the other way, and instead of using the crappiest materials, try to use the absolute best materials. So just to kind of recap the ferro rod fire, put a lot of flash tinder in there, kind of work it together. You can also use the tinder bundle I used for the flint and steel. It's just the one I used for the ferro rod fire wouldn't be ideal for the flint and steel. And then of course the flint and steel. Make your tinder bundle or bird's nest right in the middle of a nice tinder bundle. Alright guys, and make sure it's bone dry. I've been seeing a lot of guys use some grass that's got some green on it and stuff, and that's, you know, that all comes with learning, but you really want to make sure everything is bone dry. Alright guys, well I hope you liked the video and take care.